Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you here. Juan Arango here on Beyond the Pitch. I'm joined by two very distinguished gentlemen. I'll use that term, not loosely on this occasion, but I'll definitely use it in a way in which it's quite important because speaking in a more serious tone, two gentlemen have been able to really establish themselves in their respective lines of work. First and foremost, Rod Underwood, of course, has been a coach for nearly almost 25 years, maybe more. He can correct me if I'm wrong. He's been able to coach abroad. He's been able to coach within the United States in many capacities, as an assistant coach, as a head coach, as a development coach, in many aspects. So it is quite important to keep that in mind. Meanwhile, for many of you that know me, of course, this gentleman also is no stranger. I've had him on many of my broadcasts. I've worked with him before. He's currently a host, commentator, analyst, pundit, whatever you want to mention, over at beIN Sports. And, of course, that's George D. Metellus. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show. First and foremost, let's start with you, Rod. How did you get into coaching? How did you get into wanting from being a player to going and becoming a coach? What got you interested? Was it just being involved in the game, or was it just wanting to be, I don't know, you did have an itch for coaching at one point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes all the way back to really, for me, when I first started playing, right? I first started playing when I was about, 6 years old or so. And from that moment, I knew that I'd always be involved in the game. And at an early age, like at 16, I really coached my first team, a place where I grew up playing soccer in Atlanta. I went back and I coached like a U10 or U12 team. And then from that point, while I was playing, I started doing some coaching and then going through the licensing process in soccer. And it just led to what it is today. And it's just so big in a different way, because really now the focus is, like any other coach, you want to win everything. You want to coach the biggest teams you can. You want to coach the best players you can. But it's also now the game to impact culture and change lives. So that's really it's evolved to. And I feel like that's a platform that for all my years, I've done nothing else but be involved in the game as a player coach. And it's just the way to do it for me.
George, I mean, I'm familiar with your career, obviously, but for those of that are listening, tell people a little bit about your career and what you've had to get through. And of course, I'll come back to Rod and I'll talk about what he's been able to overcome throughout his career as well. But George, what have you had to do throughout your career from where you started to where you're at in order to get there?
Whoa, that's a great question. For me, it's just a matter of working hard, making sure that you get all your information down. But I've been very lucky. I've had people who've given me an opportunity to do this, to be on the air and talk football and allow me to be myself. But it was, going through college and then doing an internship. We interned both of us together at Gold TV, and having to just persevere, because there was a long stretch of time where after I did my internship at Gold TV, I wasn't working in football broadcasting. I did some writing for a couple sites, but nothing major in terms of the broadcasting side of it, either a radio or television. So it was just a matter of perseverance and just saying, hey, I really want to do this. So let me keep my foot in the industry, if you will, by, as I mentioned before, writing and things like that. We had a podcast for a long time, you, me, and another colleague of ours, Mike Lopez. So that helped keep us, our skills sharp. But it really is just a matter of perseverance and just saying, you know what, I like to do this and nothing's going to stop me from doing it. And then being fortunate enough to be around the right group of people who will give you a chance, who will say, hey, okay, let's see what this guy can do. Let's give him a shot. And I've been really fortunate in that respect.
Ron, what about your case? What have you had to do in order to, not only as a player, but also as a coach, to be able to get the opportunities you've had, to be able to go and coach abroad, or even go and have an opportunity or be mentioned or be in a conversation for a coaching job here in the United States?
Well, it's really, it's two different things, right? First off, as a player, right? Coming up through the game, because I've been in the game for about 45 years as a player, as a coach, right? Starting as a young kid all the way till today,
Yeah.
right? So there's been such an evolution of the game, right? From the early 70s where there was NSL, and then through the 80s where there was really no real outdoor soccer. Then the 90s picked up with the USL, and and then the middle 90s picked up with MLS, and you see what you have today. So as a player, to be fair, I'm born in 1967, right? So civil rights, all those things coming out of civil rights, opportunities were there, and I was young enough where those things didn't really have an effect in terms of stopping me from going and doing things, in the 70s. So as a player, you're really judged on I came at a time where you were judged on your ability, not so much because of what you looked like. And then sort of fast forward as a player, in what I would say, getting recruited into colleges and getting the opportunities to play in college. A big thing for me, I was the first Black player to play at my school at Furman University. This is like 1985. So in essence, that's not a long time ago, right? And
Yeah.
really, in the big scheme of things, right? So, it wasn't easy for players to get those chances to go to college, and for whatever reason those were, but I had the opportunity. It happened for me, and but coaching has been really different than playing, because coaching, you're the leader, right? You're the leader.
Yeah.
You're the guy in charge. You're the guy speaking to the media. You're the guy that's picking the players. You're the guy that's speaking to the owner. You're the guy that looks towards, right? So that selection process is really different. And I've always tried to say, okay, the best person gets the job. And for me, something that's really important is my faith, right? My faith is God's going to open whatever door he wants to open up. And you go through that door. So that I've always had my faith perspective, right? But I also realize that that when you are the one that someone wants you to lead, it's a lot more complicated than just simply being the best and being the perfect person for that job.
Is it a case of you being an outsider? Is it you being different? Is it you not being part of a fraternity, quote unquote fraternity? Where do you see the problems? And people, when I've talked about you, Rod, in particular, people say, yeah, great coach. He understands his game. He understands the game. So then if it's based on ability, why aren't you getting those opportunities?
Yeah, for me, it's like, if I look at myself personally, right? If I look at the people that I know in the game, at the youth level, I know at, professional level, college level, people that I know, I'm not, and I don't feel like I'm an outsider, right? In terms of, I'm not a guy that could, I'm a guy that could pick up the phone and call, quote unquote, one of the biggest clubs, some of the biggest youth clubs in the country, and they'll know who I am and they'll pick up my call. Same thing at the professional level, same thing at the college level. So I don't consider myself as an outsider by no means, all right? As an outsider. And when we talk about ability, right, it's always going to be jaded from my eyes, right? And I feel like I'm as good as anybody else in terms of
course,
right,
coaching, right? And understanding the game. So that's and I say that not because I'm an arrogant guy, and I'm not, just because I see the game, I talk the game, have conversations. I hear the comments that players say back about me that says, okay, I know what I'm talking about, right? So for me, I think it goes beyond just simply ability, right? And the most difficult thing for me is that, let's talk from the top down, because here's the thing for me.
Yeah.
We're, at the end of the day, we're talking about leadership and we're talking about building something. And when we don't have, let me take a step back. Let me jump right into something, right? So 2014, I worked with Preki at Sacramento. And And that was because I was working with the Portland Timbers at the time, and Gavin and the ownership in Portland and the ownership in Sacramento developed a partnership. And, so my job was to go down as with Sacramento, and I worked with Preki. So 2014 won the championship. 2005, at the end of the 14 season, I became the academy director. And that was really a convoluted situation. It wasn't what they sold it out to be. It's okay, it's a promotion. And it was, in a sense, a promotion because you became the leader of a particular part of the organization, but it was also taken away from working day to day with professionals, right? And we all know the reality behind it. To work with the professionals every day is the biggest job of any club.
Of course.
From the perspective of how you are perceived. Let's put it that way. How you're perceived from the outside. That's part of it. That's the biggest part, right?
Right.
So I became the academy director. Preki left in 2000. I think you guys probably remember back when you might get a job in the EPL and might get a job wherever, right?
Yeah.
And I was the academy director. This is like 15, right? And I personally, after winning the championship at 14, no one ever talked to me about taking over for Preki when he left. No one spoke to me.
Wow.
So,
wait, they didn't speak to you, or they just took it for granted that you were in the conversation, or just nothing at all? I mean,
no interview, nothing?
What happened there?
So put it this way. How I found out was through rumor. That's how I found out. So I went right to the source.
Okay.
I went right to the source and said, hey, I said, I would want that job. You know that. Why don't you even talk to me? Even if I don't get the job, well, why didn't you talk to me? I went right to the source. And then they sort of, how'd you find out? I said, I know, I'm on the inside of this club. How am I not going to know, right?
Right.
So, they bring in a guy, right? And this guy, I can't say he did a bad job. I can't say he did a good job. I think he did okay, right? I'm not here to knock anybody. Everybody gets a chance. That's great, right? But for me, that was really disappointing. The fact that I didn't even get in the conversation, and everybody in the leadership roles in Sacramento knew that I was in Sacramento because I wanted to do first team football every day.
It seems
so.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so Rod, do you think I'll break the ice here with the elephant in the room. Do you think it was because you were a black man that you got overlooked, or what are your thoughts about that question? How do you think about that situation?
I think it was a lot of things, really.
Okay.
I think it was a combination, right? For me, it's very clear, right? Just throughout America, that it's not easy getting a job as an American, black, white, whatever, right?
Right.
If you look at the coaches, especially at the lower leagues, USL, because I go through and I count. I say, okay, there's this number of Americans, there's this number of blacks, there's this number of Hispanics. I count and see how many people are in these jobs, right? I go through and I look, because it's like, are we really representing? So I think it's a combination of being American. I think it's a combination of being black. I think it's a combination of maybe they're not thinking I'm good enough. And that's fine. I have no qualms about someone saying, hey, Rod, we don't think you're the right guy for the job because you're not good enough.
Yeah.
But because that's the nature of sport, right? We all grew up in sport, right? And
At times it's subjective.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
So I have no qualms with anybody saying, Rod, we don't think you're good enough. Okay, thank you. That's fine. But when you help the team win a championship, and you have a good relationship, right? Because now, even on top of that, right? So I was running the academy. There was no academy, and I had great people around me, right? Jeremy was the academy manager. He really helped put this together. The owner of the club really helped put this academy together. People in the community helped put this academy together. But I was a leader. I was the guy in charge as the academy director. We had 700 players show up for tryouts. 700 for youth academy tryouts in 2015.
Wow. Wow. In Sacramento, in Northern California.
Sacramento, yeah.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah. So,
yeah, good.
So my work was showing that I could do something. I could lead, right? I could at least lead and put things together and lead and make success, right? At least. So for me, that was at least like a conversation, right? At least like a conversation. And it just didn't happen.
Mm.
How was that ratio that you're talking? You put in a lot of factors. Just there a second. We're talking with Rod Underwood and George Metellus here on Beyond the Pitch. You mentioned the factors. Being a black man, an American man, soccer guy. All these things are not good enough. When did that ratio? If there's a way to kind of measure it, when did that ratio kind of change a little bit in the future? And you say, no, there's other factors. There's, I think it's the color of my skin has a little bit more to do. This factor has a lot more to do. Them seeing me in a different light has more to do. When did that change a little bit more on your end? I'm going to ask you the same question in a second, George.
Well, here's the catch, right? So there were a lot of years, right? Especially in the early years coaching the USL. I was the only black coach around, right? I was the only black coach around early years at the USL. Maybe, might have been one more, right? It was so minute, we didn't even know each other, put it that way, right?
Damn.
So, I would literally have, right, say we're going into a match, right? We're going to a match. Got my assistant coach beside me. I'm standing right here. The officials would walk past me and speak to my assistant, put the hand out to the assistant before they put the hand out to me.
Whoa.
Introduce themselves.
Wow. That's
granted now.
Was it wait, hold on. So there's no doubt. So there's no, it was an accident. Did they know you were the coach?
How would you not know I'm the coach?
That's all you need to say.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I wanted to leave that little door that was, kind of creaking open, maybe for someone to say, but maybe they didn't know or did it. No, there was no doubt. That's why the reason I asked that question. George, on your end too, the reason I brought both of you on, there's one little phrase I remember from Murder to Excellence in saying, domino, only spot a few blacks the higher I go.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I brought you guys here, because at one point, just like Rod being the only black soccer coach around, dude, you were the only black soccer broadcaster around anywhere. Of course, now you have many national team players that have come into the mix a little bit more, but never a broadcaster. What was your situation? And maybe it's a little bit different in your case because you didn't come in a quote unquote American setting, if you will. But
right.
How was it being the only guy?
Let me put it to you like this. I say thank you to my Air Force discipline, because if I didn't have Air Force discipline and patience, I probably would have got fired a long time ago. Some of the things people have said to me at work, on social media requires, and I'm sure Rod, you go through this as well, what some of the things people will tell you on social media and work, what have you. It requires a great deal of patience. It requires a great deal of biting your tongue, even swallow a little bit of your pride, because you're doing what you love to do. I can tell you right now, I've been in the business 10 years. It'll be 10 years in November. And I can count on both of my hands and still have fingers left over with the number of black people I've worked with. And not just in front of the camera. I'm not talking about former coaches or ex-players that come on a show. I'm talking about behind the scenes in every aspect of a network. So that gets frustrating after a while when you work and you barely see people who look like you. And so you have to learn, first of all, you have to be open-minded enough to accept and learn about other people's cultures, the dominant culture at your job. And then you have to swallow your pride, because you're going to hear things that you don't want to hear, that you shouldn't hear, at the job or on social media. And then third, at least for me, maybe you could say I'm insecure when it comes to this third point, but I feel like I have to be not as good, but better. I have to know more. You know, Juan, you know me, I speak Spanish. Part of that is because, well, part of it is because I'm single and I want to get women. But the number two, the number two reason is it helps me in my job. The jobs that I've gotten, I don't know if I would have gotten them if I didn't speak Spanish. And I have counterparts who don't speak a word of Spanish, and they're in the same position.
Not even a word, a lick.
A lick. They don't speak a lick of Spanish, and they're in the same position as me. I have colleagues who don't have degrees. I have a degree from the University of Miami, a bachelor's, and I went to broadcasting school after that. So it can be frustrating, but at the same time, you say, look, this is what I love to do, and nothing can stop me from doing what I love to do. Just like Rod. Rod loves to coach. He's going to be is a great coach. He loves to do it. So whatever little obstacle it is, whether it's cultural, racial, work ethic, whatever little obstacle is put in front of you, you still have to overcome it and fight through it. Because we, in the end, whether we see it or not, and I'm sure we both see it, we are an example. I've had Black people on social media come up to me and say, hey, man, you're the only one doing it. Keep up the good work. Thanks for doing it. It's good to see people who look like me on air talking about soccer that aren't former athletes, former players. That means a lot. And that motivation keeps you going, even in the face of a lot of BS. Because trust me, I've seen my share of BS, and I've had to go through a lot of BS. So it's like I said, I'm glad I have that Air Force discipline to keep me from losing my mind.
Samuelito once said that you have to, I guess you have to run like a black man to live like a white man. Or you have to work twice as hard to be, you have to work twice as hard to be half as good. And I've heard that one too a lot. Is that what you think in your respective lines of work when it comes to being successful, or at least being mentioned on par with many people in your industry, in your respective industries, I should say?
Rod, go ahead for you first.
George,
I inherited my dad. I inherited my dad's work ethic, right? My aunt will say that my dad had a job as long as they can remember, right? And when he retired for the first time, it's like he'll be working again, right? And within 2 years, he had another job doing the same thing, right? So I think part of that, so do I feel like I have to work harder? I feel like,
or at least if there's that premonition, that belief in there that you have to do or know more, work harder, that type of thing.
Be better, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say it's hard to say that because, like, for me, again, like I inherited that work ethic from my dad. That it's like, you work from sun up to sundown. And then when you go to bed, you can wake up in the middle of the night and work more. That's the kind of work ethic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But understanding that when I put my resume next to someone else and it shines head and shoulders above, and I don't still get the job, I would say from that perspective, yes.
Yeah, I'm with Rod on this one. Yeah, I feel like I can't do, if I'm more deserving or put in more work, I'm going to get less pay or the same amount of pay, even though I've put in more work or I've accomplished more or have better credentials. So there is that thought that you have to do more in order to get to the same position. So I definitely feel that way. Maybe it's changing. I don't know. But I definitely feel like, just off of my personal experience, like I said, college degree, broadcasting afterwards, learning a language that's not my native cultural language to get to the same point as my colleagues. To me, that's putting in extra work. That's having to be better
in
than
your case, you basically know 3 because you also know Creole.
Yeah, because Creole as well, right? And having to negotiate those 3 and getting to the point where I could even be in the conversation with them, be at the same level of pay, same level of exposure as my colleagues, and they don't have 1/3 the credentials, or didn't have to go through 1/3 of what I had to go through. So I definitely feel like there is that feeling that, okay, I have to do more in order to get to the same spot. But in a way, it's good, because Rod, you mentioned work ethic, and work ethic is massively important. If you feel that way, it makes you work harder. Yeah. And in your own mind, it's an accomplishment. The fact that I could speak a language that a lot of my colleagues have problems speaking, or I have a degree, I've done this, I was in the Air Force, that makes me feel good. Like, that's a great accomplishment. And that even if I don't get the same amount of pay or same amount of exposure, I still have that as something that's an accomplishment that gives me confidence going forward.
And for something that it's, I guess, for lack of a better term, not quote unquote American, when did you start saying, hey, you know what? Look, man, this situation here, I'm not going to progress as a coach. I'm not going to. Do you feel like you have a bit of a glass ceiling, a lower glass ceiling compared to some of the other of your colleagues in your respective fields, based on, what's going on, based on, the color of your skin, based on your culture, based on, your experiences per se? Are you seeing that there's been a limitation in your respective careers over that?
Well, I feel as such because I feel in that way because it's like, you're out of a job, right? And
yeah,
it's just the nature of coaching, right? So that's just the way it is. Coaching, you're always out of a job. You're in a job, you're out of a job. That's all fine. But you find yourself, right, taking jobs that it's going to be difficult, that the budget's not going to be right, that you don't have players, but you say, okay, if I prove myself in this job, maybe someone will see me, right? So you wind up taking all these bad jobs because of the system.
Yeah.
And you create this road that it looks like you're not good because you've been in bad situations. You got to try to explain your way out of all those, of why you were in those jobs. And you almost because of the system, sometimes you paint yourself into a bad light because the system has forced you to take jobs, or not force you, because that's not fair. You make your own decision.
Yeah.
You've taken positions because you feel like personally that if you don't, you're going to get further and further behind, and you're not staying relevant in the current market. So therefore, but then you kill yourself because you're taking a bad job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me follow up with that, because that seems interesting, because of course, here in the US, many are going crazy over, Jesse Marsh. I'm like, wait a second, Jesse Marsh has been abroad 2 or 3 years. Yet no one talks about Rod Underwood, who's been going abroad since 2009, 2010, taking coaching jobs there. I don't hear anyone talking about Rod Underwood.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's twofold, right? It's twofold that some of the jobs that I've taken, I mean, the jobs I have had, right, have been little jobs, right, in the eye of soccer, right? And it's twofold. I wanted to take those jobs, but also those jobs were the only jobs that were available to me, right? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to coach. I've always wanted to coach outside the country.
Yeah.
But also those jobs would I have stayed in the U.S. if a big job was there? Of course I would have, because it's a lot easier to coach in your country, right? Because it's just a lot easier to coach in the country than pick up your family, or don't pack up your family and you move away to another country and you learn the culture and all these dynamic things, right? So those were the jobs that were available at the time. Did I want to coach inside the country? Yes. But would I have stayed if jobs that were good inside the country would have come? That's just, but I enjoyed my time at all those. And, to get outside the country, I mean, it's a big thing, right? Because for me, when I see it, right, I see it as a chance to be in a different country, to learn a different culture, all these positives, right? But also to, so you've done something that other people haven't done, you know, and
Right.
I would think, right, that those would open those opportunities, coaching outside, right, would open up more doors and open up more opportunity.
George, do you feel the same? Do you feel like at times, I'm not saying always, but there could be at times that you go and you say, man, I've got a bit of a low ceiling myself.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way sometimes. That's for sure. And I have to fight those feelings because you can't limit yourself in your career and in your life. You know, you have to be able to say, okay, this door isn't open right now, but maybe in a few years it'll open up. But sometimes there are feelings where I feel like, okay, there is a glass ceiling. I'm only going to go so far. And then, you know, you see other colleagues doing other things and moving on, and you go, man, you know, I mean, no disrespect to them, but I'm just as good as they are. I got more personality. I got more. I got as much knowledge, and if I don't have the knowledge, I certainly can get the knowledge as well as some of my colleagues that have moved on. And yet, this is where I'm at right now. So, and a lot of it for me, it's not. Look, the race has something to do with it, but I as someone who tries to look at that option as the last option, I try to look at, okay, if I'm this is not happening for me, what am I doing wrong? Am I saying, is my presence off, my camera, am I looking at the camera right? Am I saying this wrong? Are my facts wrong? Like, look at all the other options before I get down to that. But sometimes in my kind of, if I want to say lowest moments or most frustrating moments, it's easy for me to look at how I look and say, oh, you know, I'm Black. That's why this is not happening for me. And I have to fight that because, and like Rod said, there are a lot of other factors that go into certain decisions in life in general. So sometimes I do feel that way, but then I have to fight that feeling and say, look, man, George, what can you do to improve? What can you do to be better? And look inward first before I blame anything outward. It's like, you know, it's like personal responsibility. That I forgot who said that, but that's what it's all about. Trying to look inward first before you start blaming external factors. But to answer your question, there have been times where I felt like, okay, I'm at a glass ceiling here and I'm getting pretty close to it.
Well, okay, that's all fine and great, but there does come a time where, and I feel it too in my position. Again, I don't feel the same way as you do, and you don't feel the same way as I do. But to a certain point, that elephant in the room has to be addressed. When you get to that certain point, you start saying, wait, no, okay, I've already checked. I look good. I'm not looking sloppy. I haven't done my work in a sloppy manner. I've been on point every single time, whether it's on studio or whether it's in the studio or whether it's on a pitch. Have you had to confront that issue with someone? Have you ever had to say, hey, you know what, dude, wait, okay, you know, I've been looking at everything. I've asked other people for their feedback. All the boxes are checked. Everything's fine. So why? And then, of course, that's the one that ends up being not the one that ends up being addressed, but still the one that ends up being, you know, has to start talking about it at some point, because it is a factor whether we like it or not, or is it just me trying to contrive something that's actually not there?
Well, here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I'm with George, right? And the perspective that you look inward first, right? I believe that because as a coach, what I tell my players, right, at every level I coach is, if I ever come to you and say it's your fault, or come to you in a way that makes it seem as if it's your fault as the group, I look at myself, I examine myself first, because something I've learned, I used to, when I first started coaching, as soon as the game was over, I'd go in the locker room after the match and maybe talk 20 minutes to the team, right? And the emotions are high and you say dumb things, or you're really, really high because you want to, you're really, really low. So what I decided to do is I decided to, when the game is done, everyone gets a handshake. Good job, guys. Blah, blah, blah. If we've got commitments, you know, interviews, we've got to do an outing. Guys, you know, do all your things you need to do. We'll talk tomorrow, or we'll talk 2 days from now, right? So it gives me time to examine, okay, what could I have done to help the team get the result that we wanted to get, or help the team simply play better. So that's before I even look at the external, I look at the internal. And there's always a checklist, right? There's always a checklist. And what really has sort of changed my thinking over the last really since all the way the country looks right now, is that the number of stories that I hear of my former players or people that I don't know talking about they've experienced the same things that I have experienced, such as getting pulled over by the police just because. I mean, one time I'm driving from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Tennessee to drop off my oldest daughter to meet my stepmom and my aunts and my nieces and nephews, and she's going to go spend a few weeks in Atlanta with them. And I'm driving through Tennessee. There's a car in front of me. I'm right behind the car, and there's a third car behind me. And we're all speeding, right? We're on the freeway, we're speeding. But I'm the middle car. I get stopped and pulled over. The car behind me continues. The car in front, who is going the fastest, continues on. I get pulled over. The police officer says, "Can I search your car?" They take myself and my daughter. My daughter is, oh gosh, she can't be over, let's say, less than 10 years old, right? Less than 10. Mm-hmm. And she's probably more like 6 or 7. So they put us in the back of the police car, her and I, while they're searching the car. In the front of the car, we don't notice at first when we get in, since we sit down, there's a police dog in the front of the car barking. That was the cages there so the dog can get back to get us. The police officer comes to us, and approximately, we'd sit there for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, right? Because he goes to the trunk first. Only thing in the trunk is my daughter's bag she's going to use for the summer, and my bag. They open up the bag first, and on the top of my bag is my Bible. He closes the trunk, comes in and says, "You're free to go."
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I've heard these kind of stories over the last few days, over the last few weeks, and then it put me into a state of going back and trying to run through my life. And then these feelings that come of late of saying, well, just maybe, yeah, all these other factors. Maybe there's a better coach with more experience and blah, 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 blah. But that can't be at every job, man.
Yeah.
It can't be at every job. Because I have purposely put my CV into a job that pays half as what I really deserve to get paid. And knowing the level of people that are going to apply, I should be in the top 10 at least. And sometimes I never apply. And I've done it purposefully. So hearing the stories of other people over the last week or so about what's happening in the country, go back and reflect. And then as I reflect, I start to say, just maybe. Because here's the last thing I want to do, right? And I'll share the story. I've always been an inclusive person in the sense of, it doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, what race, it doesn't really matter. I look at you as who you are, you're human, and that's it. You know, my first wife was Mexican, so my oldest daughter's half Mexican. My wife now, we've been married for almost 15 years, is white. So all my kids are mixed. So I've always lived in a mixed environment, even growing up, right? Even growing up, as a black kid growing up in America, very few black kids played soccer because I'm 53 years old. So very few black kids really didn't start playing in droves until the 90s, right?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Yeah.
So I've always been the minority in the group for the most part. Where I went to Furman University, right? I told you before, I was the first black player. So as my mind starts to wander back and start to say, well, just maybe, man, just maybe.
Rod, let me follow up with that question. And it's more of a fill in the blank than anything else. I'll play devil's advocate here a little bit. I'm the general manager, the person that hires you to be the coach. And they come up to you and say, Rod, you know, great candidate, but you are missing blank. that's why we went with X. What was that blank in a lot of cases?
I don't know, right? I don't know. And I just share, and I don't want to throw the team names into it, but recently.
No need to. I mean, just experiences that you've had. I'm more than that. Yeah. It's not about that.
Yeah. Recently I was in for jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And both GMs, right? Both GMs, this is a professional level. Both GMs said, one of the GMs said, "You're my guy. I want you to have the job." Before I leave the interview, right? You go in, you fly in, you spend a couple of days, you meet everybody, goes,
of course,
guy. Don't get the job.
Mm.
And a second time I go into another interview, GM doesn't say that you're my guy, but he says, "Boy, I really, really like you, and I could see you here," right? He could go as far as saying, "You're my guy." Didn't get the job.
no reason why. Not like, "Hey man, thank you," but
Yeah, and the replies are, we think we found someone a little that fits what we want a little bit better. And that's an easy way to say it, right?
Yeah.
That's an easy way to say it. We found someone that fits a little bit better. That's just, I've been in hiring positions and I've used the exact same phrase, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does that usually mean? We found somebody better, or we found somebody that fits better, or that you've come to realize, or at least you think. I mean, is it that they're a better manager? Is it a better, I don't know. I mean, you tell me.
Well, the first one I explained to you was the person that got the job ahead of me had a career, not really in head coaching, but assisting in other areas, but really no head coaching experience. And that person got the job. The other guy, they got the other job. This guy was a national team player, right? So his resume spectacular in terms of his playing. One of the best players ever play in the country, for our country. So but the coaching aspect of it was really no different than mine. Mine was more experience, but it's job. So when things like that happen, you have to kind of just like tip your hat and say, okay, yeah, this guy, I know this guy, I know he his pedigree, blah 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 blah. So for me, when you lose out like the second guy compared to the first guy, it's a little bit easier to swallow. But when you lose out to you're clearly better, then you just have a hard time swallowing.
Of course.
Yeah.
George, what about you? I mean, I know some, but I'd rather you say it.
Okay.
And I'd rather you go and say certain things instead of me trying to put things, trying to put words in your mouth, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, for me personally,
what do you feel now? Yeah.
Well, for me personally, it's a situation where, I've been in Rod's shoes. I mean, I remember I was 16 years old. I was living, my mom and dad, in the house, both we were middle-class kids. And I was in my neighborhood. We lived in a 2-story house, me and my brother, my mom, and my dad, in that neighborhood in Marbella Park, way out west in Dade County, Miami. And me and my friends were in my car going, I don't know for where we're going, probably going to meet some girls, whatever. And we stopped and we saw another group of our friends. And there's like maybe 7 of us. 5 of them are black. 2 are like Hispanic. So we're there, we're chilling. We're 15, 16-year-old boys in the 90s. So hey, what's up, man? How you doing, y'all? You ain't nothing. Okay, let's see what's up. And we were wrestling. We weren't fighting. We didn't have any weapons, nothing like that. We're in our neighborhood. Everybody knows us in the neighborhood. And I swear, about 5 cop cars came just screaming around the corner like a building exploded or something. It was crazy. They put shotguns to our heads, made us kneel on the ground, and they searched my car. And we didn't have any guns. We weren't fighting. We were wrestling. We were all friends. We know each other. And they searched my car. Now, I'm not a criminal because my parents raised me better than that. And they didn't find anything in my car. But we know friends and people who had stuff planted in their car. So if they were really evil, they could have put drugs in my car. They could have put a gun in my car, and they didn't. And I for them to put the shotgun in my head, and then one of my friends was like, we didn't do anything wrong. They're like, shut up. And one of them said the N-word to us as well, to my friend who was talking trash, because the cops were white or white Hispanic. And I was scared for my life. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend to be like hard or anything. I wasn't. I was scared. I felt like I had a shotgun 2 inches from my head. I can almost feel my brains coming out the other side. I was so scared. So we all have, you look like me and Rod, you're going to have these stories, right? And we're blessed that nothing happened to us physically. We didn't get injured or anything like that. But when it comes to the career, you know, I remember when I graduated college, I couldn't find a job in broadcasting. So I had to work, you know, and island people, you know, my parents are Haitian. Island people is like, you're not staying. My mom's like, you're not staying in my house, no job. You better work. So I got a job. I had to do something after I graduated. So I went to bartending school. 2-week course, easy, passed it. I was the only black person in my class. Everybody else was Hispanic, white Hispanic, because this is in South Florida. About seven of us total. And so I go out looking for work. So every day I'm going to 3 or 4 different places. I put on a nice shirt, tie, slacks, and I'm going and I'm applying for jobs like every day, 3 or 4 different places. No, nothing. I'm not even getting an interview. Nothing. Every day grinding. They had a job placement at the bartending school, ABC bartending school off Flagler Street. And every Thursday I'd go to the job placement. Okay, George, here's a place that's hiring. Okay, so I go there, dress up nice, and I apply. Nothing. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by. And after the second week, I go to the job placement, and the guy running the school says, hey, everybody in your class got a job already. I said, oh, that's great. Good for them. I said, but I'm still looking. That's all right. We'll keep going. You'll find something. Another week goes by where every day, 3 or 4 different places, I'm signing, I'm applying. I mean, I thought that because I had a college degree, that was stopping people from hiring me. So I took that off. I wouldn't put it on my application.
So now you didn't even go to college at that point.
I didn't even go to college at that point because I thought because I had a college degree, I was quote unquote overqualified. So I took that off of my job application and I still wasn't getting hired. Nothing happened. 3 weeks, a month after I finished the course, I didn't get a job. And I'll be 98 years old with dementia and I will not forget this, what happened to me. Because I went to the job placement a month later and the man who ran the school was a really nice older Jewish man, really nice man. He says, George, what are you doing here? You don't have a job yet? I said, no, I've been going every day, sometime on Saturdays for a month and I can't get anything. He looks at me and he goes, you know what the problem is? Or, you know, no, he didn't say the problem. He said, you know what it could be? I said, what? He looks at me and he holds up his arm, takes his finger and he rubs his skin as if to say, because of your skin color, you ain't getting these jobs. I got a job finally 2 weeks after that. So the people who graduated in my little class got a job in 2 weeks. I got a job in a month and a half. A month and a half after everybody else 2 weeks later, 3 times longer. And I was applying every day, 3 or 4 different places in South Florida. So that leads to some frustration. And then if you're talking about the broadcasting, it's just the lack of faces. You know, I mean, it's not proportionate to, and managers as well. It's not proportionate to the players on the pitch. If black players are 15%, and let's go with European football because where I work, we do European football. Well, we have Libertadores as well. So let's say Europe and South America, which are the 2 huge hubs of football, right? If there's 15% of the players are black, let's say, and this is just a number I'm making up, I don't know for sure. I would think that the broadcaster should be 15% black and the manager should be 15% black. If we're talking about proportionate to the number of players, and we know that's not even close to that. So there is an issue in football when it comes to race and to people of darker complexions. Now, we can break through that. I'm positive we can break through that, but it's going to take time and it's going to take some people who are just bold enough to say, hey, this is the situation. And I've seen people come and go in my job, in my career, and on different networks, at my network, at different networks, and they're all, nothing changes. It's all the same. So there's a systemic problem here, and there's a systemic problem, and there's also a problem of people who still think that people of color, darker skinned people of color, are inferior. Now, they're not going to say it explicitly, outwardly, because who wants to come off as racist? Nobody ever wants to be that publicly. But you can tell by the hiring processes and the images you see on the football field with barely any black managers, barely any black broadcasters. That's still a problem in the world that we're carving out a living in.
And it's kind of also facilitates the narrative. And I'll tell you this because of my experience with one particular pundit, with former Liverpool player Steve McMahon, when I was doing the World Cup punditry over in the Caribbean. And you'd constantly hear him say, oh, Raheem Sterling lacks intelligence. Raheem Sterling doesn't have, tactical awareness. All of these types of things. Oh, and we hear it also on television too, George, Rod. The fact that African teams, fast, big, strong, lacking tactical awareness, lacking intelligence.
Yeah.
Now, and I ask more, not as a person interviewing, but I'm asking it more as a person that would want to help out, that I think I can say has tried to help out. Sometimes it comes out good, sometimes it doesn't. What do you do, or what can one do in order to combat those notions, to combat those preconceived notions that the black broadcaster or the black football player or the black coach or whoever it may be lack X, Y, or Z?
Let me just say, and you guys, since you guys are the broadcasters. The other day I was watching Dortmund and beIN, and something that really stuck out with me, or really jumped out at me, was between the two teams. And you guys probably can go back and find the game and then see it to get there. Yeah. But there was between the two teams, there was 7 to 10 black players on the pitch at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, what's my point? We know the history of Germany, and we know when they even had their first black player to play on the national team. That was in the 2000s, I want to say, right?
Gerald Asamoah, maybe, I think.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Asamoah, and then they had Kaká, of course, who played with, but he was Brazilian.
Right.
Yeah. But of course, then afterwards, you start to see the Boatengs. You start to see those types of players come more frequently, albeit I'm using frequently, but you have had a number of players come out, black German players in the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Right.
My point is, right, we know the history of Germany going from Hitler forward, right? And the racism and East Germany, West Germany, all those different things. How can a country since, let's say, 1945, and my parents were born in 1945, and they're 75 years old, in 75 years, it can seem as if Germany is a little more progressive than we are. And don't get me wrong about America. I'm all about raising the flag and supporting America because I believe in the country, and I believe in the country. Yeah. But it raises the question to me: how can they have what they have, and we can be at the place where we are today with people on the streets doing what they're doing?
Yeah.
I don't know, George. Yeah,
that's a great question. It's funny, Rod. My parents are born in the 40s as well. My mom is 70 something. My dad's 70 something. So there's that.
Don't be saying that too loud, man. Your mom's gonna get mad at you.
She's yeah.
53, dude. He's 53. She had you when she was 19 or something. Extremely young. Don't be saying that.
I will not be giving her the link for this conversation. We'll just leave it at that. I'm scared of my mom still.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I am too, man.
Yeah. But I think, look, my parents lived in Europe for a while. They lived in Spain. Actually, they started dating in Spain. Then they came to the United States and got married and had kids. And one thing my mom tells me, she says, even look, Europe has its history of racism, prejudice, and all of that, but there seems to be in Europe a little more of an open-mindedness to it. Now, they're not perfect by any means, not at all. So I'm not trying to say it's utopia, because it's definitely not. But there's an openness to intelligence, to intellectualism over there that maybe in America we don't have yet. America's a very young country compared to most of the countries in the world also. And I mean, Rod, you have kids. I have a nephew and niece. You know how young kids are, man. Sometimes they're so stubborn. You're like, come on, I'm older. I know what I'm talking about, and they're so stubborn. They don't want to learn. So sometimes America as a young country are like young kids. There's examples of what to do, but they're so stubborn that they don't want to listen. So they're
kind of like that. Yeah.
So that could be part of it as well. But also, you got to remember, Europe doesn't have the racial history that America does. I mean, America had slavery for 400 plus years. Then you add Jim Crow on top of that is still affecting us to this day. So I would venture to say that most Black people who are in Europe are not quote unquote native Europeans. They came from, like my parents, they came from the Caribbean or from the continent, from nations on the continent of Africa or someplace, well, the other places, so
from South America, from
South
North
America.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they have a different racial history than the United States does. I got to say United States because America is the whole continent, United States.
Yeah.
So that plays a factor into it as well. And it's just a situation where here in America, we still have to get over looking at each other because of our skin color and our differences and our culture. Look, a lot of people say embrace the similarities, and I kind of say that's BS. I say
that's
easy. I say embrace the differences. Like I'm a Haitian. My parents are Haitian. I grew up in Miami. I didn't grow up on Peruvian food, but you know what? It's different than Haitian food. I'm gonna try it. I didn't grow up on Indian food. When I say India, I mean the country of India.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't grow up on that. That's not native cultural food for me. But if somebody says, let's go to an Indian restaurant, I'm going to go eat it because it's different. It's something different to try and incorporate in your life. It might make you feel good. When I was at the University of Miami, I was a member of the African Student Union. Now, of course, I did it for the women. I'm just being honest. Okay. But
don't we all?
Yeah, we all, especially when you're 19, 20, that age group. But the side effect, and actually what I turned out to be the best part of it, was the fact that I got to learn a culture that wasn't my own. I embraced the differences. And I don't think America, we keep focusing on what's similar, what's the same. Damn that. Think about what's different in a positive light and say, hey, let me try this. Let me try this food. Let me try this music. Let me try something different, the culture that's different. I think in Europe, they have that open-mindedness to do it. And now it's not perfect by any means, but they're a little more open-minded to try it. While here, it's like, nah, I'm Black American. I got to do my Black American thing. I'm white. I got to do my white thing. I'm Hispanic. I got to stay Hispanic. And so my mom always says America's very cliquish, and she's right on point with that. And until we start saying, look, you're a human being. This is the kind of food you cook. All right, let me try it. Oh, it's delicious. And that breaks down barriers. And when you break down barriers, that's when you start to get people to come together. And football is a great example of breaking down barriers, even with all its issues.
No, you're right. You're right. But I mean, and you especially, well, even Rod to this point, because if we go back to Rod in Atlanta is a completely different, and you can correct me here if I'm misleading anyone. Atlanta now is different than Atlanta 20, 30 years ago, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, Atlanta started to change when they had the Olympics, right? That's when it really a melting pot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Melting pot of people. The African, Caribbean population, even Hispanic population is massive in Atlanta. It's a melting pot compared to what, growing up. I mean, growing up, you were either black or white. That's all you really knew. You didn't know.
Yeah.
You didn't know. To be fair, even if you were Caribbean, they didn't say you were Caribbean.
Black.
You were black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no distinguishing. There was no distinguishing of the of the cultures. And now, I mean, at least they begin to say, okay,
they're Somali or
yeah,
Haiti
right, yeah,
or,
they can name the countries you're from, right?
yeah.
But you know, it's just different. And when we talk about football, because I believe this. I believe there's only few things in the world that can unify people. I believe it's music, it's food, and I believe it's football. I believe those are the three most powerful things in the world to unify people. And what we get wrong is we say unity means we believe the same. Unity doesn't mean we believe the same. Unity means that we come together simply because we're human beings and everyone deserves that respect and that right to be treated equally simply because they're human beings. Not because we believe the same, not because we eat the same food, not because we're from the same country. No, simply because we're human beings, we should fight for unity, we should fight for justice, and we should fight for everyone to be treated fairly and equally. And we don't have that across the board in the country. We don't have it in football. We don't have it much power the NBA has. It's still not. NFL, you can go down the list, all these different, and then in corporate America, that's just a whole different ballgame, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
You kind of answered my question I was about to throw to both of you. If the game is unifying America, and in your case, it sounds like an absolute no. George, what about you?
If football, soccer is unifying America, no, it's not. And it's a shame because
do you George D. Metellus, you Rod Underwood feel like the game is saying, hey Rod, hey George, we love you, come be a part of us, come be a part of this that we want to grow in this country and make it something special? Do you as individuals, I'm not talking about as a coach or as a journalist, maybe if you want to interject in that perspective you can, but do you feel as individuals, as human beings, that and I'm talking about as two Black men living in America, that the game is looking to embrace you, that's looking to bring you in, that's looking to draw you in, to be able to put in your grain of salt?
Well, and here's the thing for me, right? What I've always loved about football, unlike any other sport in the world, right? What I've loved about football, it embraced individuality. So, you look across the football pitch and you see all these different guys, they have different hairstyles, they look different, they act different, they are different. And it didn't matter. Football didn't matter if you were big, fast, strong. So in football, American football, you got to be big, fast, strong. You got to have physical qualities that allow you to play football. Basketball, you got to have physical qualities that allow you to play. You look across a football pitch, look at the size of Messi. Then you look at the size of Boateng, and then you look at the size of Ibrahimovic. So you look at these different dynamics of the different variants of players. That's what was so great to me as a kid growing up. You could just be you. You could just be you, and you can find yourself on a team.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes when you see teams on a pitch when they're doing the anthems, and you see like the different sizes of the players, if you look at it, it looks pretty much like a stock market chart. You see them going up and down like this. It's really, you just see the different sizes and the different abilities and the different things that you mentioned, and I find that quite fascinating. That you're not only just talking about one particular aspect. You're talking about economic aspects. You're talking about social situations, idiosyncrasies, playing style, all these types of things that come and are converged into one player. Forget 11 or 22 or 23.
I agree with that. Look, the individuality is what makes it great. Well, one of the reasons it's great. Football is the best sport on the planet. Football, soccer. So I definitely see that. I think when you ask about as an individual and football in America, it's not the game's fault. To me, it's the people who run the game. Because to Rod's point, look, you don't have to be sick. You don't have to be built like Cam Newton to be a great football soccer player. You don't. You could be Messi, 5'7", and be the most dangerous man on the pitch. I mean, we used to do South America. Remember Diego Bonanote, who was like, he probably was 4 foot. He probably was 5'1".
He was 4'11".
4'11", and he was a pretty good player. So to me, I think the people who run soccer in this country have done a poor job of incorporating people. And the number one reason is the socioeconomic class, because we all in this country. Oh yeah, look, there's a lot of poor white people. We all know that. But in this country, normally in societies where you have a variety of complexions, we'll put it that way, the darker you are, the more you tend to be poor. It's not an absolute, but it's just the trend that the poorer you are, you usually, well, let me put it this way, the darker you are, there's you're more likely to be poor in the socioeconomic scale than if you are lighter skinned or quote unquote white. Right.
Yeah.
So US soccer, if we're talking about the sport in this country, has done a poor job of promoting the game to poor neighborhoods, which has as a side effect limited the amount of Black kids and poor Hispanic kids that can move up to the national team level, can get that training to be great footballers. And they're missing out on an opportunity because not every kid that grows up in a Black neighborhood is going to be a football player, have that build, is tall enough to be a basketball player. Me, I'm 5'11". I tried to play basketball when I was a kid. I was terrible at it. And I'm a little bit overweight, so I have the body now to play American football. But when I was a kid growing up, I didn't have the body to play American football, and I didn't want to be getting concussions every other day. So I could have played soccer. Now, luckily, I got lucky because I have Caribbean parents, and Caribbean people love soccer, love football, soccer. So I was exposed to it. But U.S. soccer didn't have a program in my neighborhood to promote the game. U.S. soccer, we know this, Juan, being in Dade County, Liberty City, that area is a poor, predominantly Black area. The NFL has a youth training center there. Where's U.S. Soccer's training center?
Nope.
None.
Oh, Little Haiti too.
Little Haiti, same thing. Where's the U.S. Soccer's training center there? Where are they at? No, nowhere to be found. Okay, and these people, you tell them, if a kid who's a poor Black kid, you tell them, look, your family you can make $800,000 playing in the MLS. You think they won't take it? Of course they will. Instead of a more of a long shot of an NBA career or NFL career. So to me, when you say as an individual, has it helped? How do Black people kind of fit in? As an individual, as a soccer broadcaster, and seeing how the business has progressed, I have to say that it's the people running U.S. soccer or the football in this country who are missing an opportunity to, for lack of a better word, expand the talent pool and make the game more popular. There's nothing stopping soccer from being the number one sport in this country. Nothing. Well, let me put it, no, I should say that. If they were able to get over that hurdle of the socioeconomic hurdle and by byproduct the racial hurdle, football, soccer would be the number one sport in this country, and it wouldn't even be close because American football is starting to dip in popularity because of the Kaepernick thing and then because of the concussions. Basketball is taking over, but like Rod mentioned, you have to be 6'8" to be any good to have a shot. Okay,
yeah,
most people are not.
I've only seen one Muggsy Bogues.
Yeah,
one of those. I've seen like two basketball players in the NBA that are below 5'11".
Spud Webb and Muggsy Bogues retired 20 years ago. We haven't had anybody under 6 foot since them. Iverson is like 6 foot 6'1". So, yeah. I mean, this is to me a situation where, as a Black person in this country who loves football, soccer, the people who run the game in this country are missing out on an opportunity to diversify the playing field, for lack of a better term, by ignoring communities of color because of their socioeconomic status. That's the way I look at it. So yeah, I think that's tied into all this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, so if I take the road and I take the gamut, right? Let's work from the bottom up, right? For a kid, right? For a kid to play recreational soccer these days, right? And a lot of places around the country, because I can't speak exactly right, to everything. A lot of places around the country play recreational soccer. A kid could be in it from anywhere from $100 to $500. All right. For a kid to play intermediate soccer. So not necessarily, DA, the Developmental Academy, or ECNL, which is middle of the road soccer, right? Middle of the road soccer. You're in it for, $1,000 to $3,000. And then you go to what we call elite soccer, which is not really elite soccer when you talk about it from the technical development side of it. That's a whole different conversation. $3,000 to $10,000. That's a barrier.
For one, wait, hold up, Ron. One kid.
One kid.
Yeah, just again to make sure, because they'll be like, well, yeah, 3,000, that's not that bad. But you start including flights, travel, hotel, food, equipment.
Yeah.
So, you can see. So just imagine this, right? Imagine this. You have clubs, right? They set budgets out per kid, right? And some of them now they pay over 10 months. They pay $200 to $400 a month. And some of that is before they travel. Some of that's before they even buy their uniform.
Well, there's an academy down here that costs $81,000.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no guarantee. And that's the part that I would think is frustrating as well, is that these kids, the $81,000 academy, there's no guarantee that kid is going to make it to the point where they could be on the first team of any club in the world. So that's money down the drain.
Well, so let's go to the top, right? And I'm gonna this for me, this is like really important. Let's go to the most elite, and that's U.S. soccer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know because I've had conversations with kids, right, who've told me, hey, coach, I got to decide if I'm going to put my last $20 of gas in my car to come to training, I'm going to use that for food. I've had kids tell me I can't make this trip because part of the money that I make pays for my family's food to eat. So if I go on this trip, I can't provide the food that I normally provide for my family to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I've had those conversations, right? I've had those conversations. But at the top level, we're not talking about those things. We're not talking about we might be talking about, we're not talking about it how it should be. We're talking about other things that are important to the game, but they're not as important as making sure that our youth are taken care of and that our youth can play the game, that our youth can be involved in the game on a consistent basis. Now, when you talk about the professional level, right, you look at USL, right? There's guys in the USL. When I was there, right? I don't know what it is now, but when I was there, guys making $800 a month.
Not that far off right now.
$800 a month.
You can't survive off of that.
Yeah. You have MLS is done in terms of finances. You can't knock. I remember back when they first started and what it was to get into the league and blah, blah, blah. So the growth of the game at the MLS level and the money has been good. Is it still where it needs to be? No, it's not where it needs to be, but the dynamic of the growth has been good. But here is the thing that I have to continually ask myself, going back to what George said about the diversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many decision makers in MLS at the corporate offices in New York, U.S. Soccer at the corporate office in U.S. Soccer, at the team level in every team, is there staff from ownership down to academy level reflective of the diversity of our country? That is the question, and that's what's ultimately going to change, and not have people like George, people like me, people like Eddie Johnson, people like Roy Lassiter, people like Raul Diaz-Arce, people like Echeverry feel like they have a chance to really be in those positions to influence and impact the game of soccer so that it it is inclusive of everybody. And right now, we cannot honestly say that is correct. It is not.
Right.
So it's just like in the
Yeah.
since all is in the court system. So many times say you are in a jury of your peers, right? Say you go to court, but let's say the person that is on, let's take this, let's turn the tables. Let's say that there is a Caucasian person on trial and they go to jury trial and the majority of the jury is black. Is that really a jury of their peers? Not really. And you flip that and you say black, and then they're on trial, and then the majority of the jury is white. Is that a jury of their peers? So how can there be inclusivity if people haven't, because of the racial divide and the social economic divide, because you have to understand those two are tied together.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Those two are tied together. The social economic divide creates the racial divide. And there are some simple, flat out people that just don't like people because of their color. Forget about the racial divide.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, forget about the social economic part of it.
Is it also a lack? Oh, go ahead. Good. I'll ask.
There would be more people of different colors leading on the pitch and the coaching aspect of it, directing academies, being executives, being sporting directors, being technical directors in clubs, if staffs really made the effort and ownership groups really made the effort to say our club reflects our city. Something that I did when I was a academy director once. When I first stepped up and I had my first interview, I said, I'm going to make sure that the academy looks like the city, from the players to the coaching staff, everything I could, going to do my best. Not saying that just because I'm going to go out and hire a Hispanic because we need to. No, the best person to do the job. And my goal is to make sure that it represents who we are as a city.
And at the very least, just get them in the door so they can, if they're not the best person for the job, then let them prove it by how they interview, you know?
Right.
Exactly. But if they don't even get a chance to get into the interview, you're going to miss probably the best person for the job because of that. So that's an aspect of it as well. And from the broadcasting side, you know, Rod, you mentioned Atlanta. I've been there a couple times. And I mean, you know this, Rod, it's a chocolate city. I mean, like the last 7 mayors have been black, right? Something like that. I mean, Martin Luther King was born in Atlanta. So obviously the black population is very, very strong and very influential. And if you look at, and like I said, this is from a broadcasting perspective, you look at the Atlanta United broadcast team. Is that a reflection of the city? No. They do a great job. They do a great job. I work with one of them, Kevin. He deserves the job. He's great. But they don't have any black people in front of the camera on the broadcasting team for a city that has a huge, massive black population. You know, they do a great job. Don't get me wrong, but it's just something about that is not right. Something about it. And it's not the talent's fault. It's not their fault. It's the people hiring their fault.
Right. And here's the thing, because this is something that I, you know, as a coach, right? I look at things and even looking at this scenario, right? Like I said earlier, you know, you lose out to someone, okay, yeah, their CV looks good, and and I think, Juan, you have a different take on it. I know you do. Is that, and I'm starting to have that take, because I used to be, oh yeah, that guy was good, okay, I'm comfortable with that. But the reality is, why couldn't I have had that chance and create the same success? George, why could you not be in front of the camera in Atlanta? Yeah, the guy you said he deserves a job, he's good, but could you not be just as good? But Did you even get a chance? Did I even get a chance? No, I didn't even get a chance. Why did I not get a chance? Simply because I'm not good enough? Because my abilities don't allow me to be there? I don't know, man.
Right.
And I think we all got to get over that, because I think we've been all making excuses. I do it all the time. And I do it partly because I'm just trying to get through, right? So I say, oh yeah, that guy's good, okay, next opportunity. But I have to start saying to myself, I'm just as good as that guy. If I had that chance, could I do that? But if I don't get a chance to prove it, right? When an MLS club, one of my friends was going to be in a prominent position at MLS club, and he used to be a coach. And I said to him, when he first was going to hire the coach, I said to him, make sure that you let the coach coach and let the coach pass or fail on his own merit. Don't meddle in his business. So what's my point there? My point is, we all of color need the opportunity to pass or fail. People are making the judgment before us before we even get the opportunity.
Right.
And
right.
you know what? And I'm glad you mentioned.
Juan,
Okay,
let me just say something real quick there. A lot of people who I don't know how I can put. A lot of people who think that we're kind of like black folk are asking for handouts, or who think that we're asking for more than what we deserve or whatever. They don't understand. We're not asking for you to hire us. We're asking us just to give us the opportunity to interview for the job. And then we can impress you with what we know or how we handle certain things. I think that's something that's or not, yeah. Right. That's something that gets lost in trends, that when we talk about black people trying to get rights in this country. I've never met a black person in my life who said, give me the job because I'm black. No, they say, just give me the opportunity to prove that I can do the job. No one I know, no one I've ever met said, I deserve this job because I'm black. No, they say, I deserve this job because I'm qualified. And that's the part that's the problem, is that we're not even getting the opportunities. Once we get the opportunities, then you could judge us on our merit. But all we want is the opportunity. We're not asking for anything more than that.
And by the way, to just add on to that, I mean, you've been one that's been rather consistent too. Now, and now we're not even talking. I'm not even talking about the skin color issue, or ethnicity issue, or maybe ethnicity, but more the nationality issue when it comes to the game here. You've said, hey, you know what? Bring some American broadcasters, but let them pass or fail based on their own merits as well.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Listen. I had an owner one time tell me, Rod, it's going to be hard for you to get a job because you're an American. I had an owner tell me that.
Yep.
Yeah. I had an owner tell me that.
That's happened to me. That's happened to me and Juan as broadcasters, where they've said, oh, well, I've had people at my job have told me that they prefer to hear games in English with a British accent. No matter how boring they are, or no matter how much knowledge they don't have or do have. I've had people, when I've made comments about certain players or expressed my opinion, I've heard people say, oh, on social media, whatever, they've said, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an American. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So that's another hurdle to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, look, I've had, I have a good agent. I have a good agent now, right? But I've had agents in the past tell me, we don't want to work with you because you're from the U.S. You're not qualified.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So
Yeah.
So in your particular cases, it's double, because
Yeah.
Instead of having to work 2 times harder, you might have to work 4 times harder. Working hard, using that term loosely as well, because it's part of the thing, and you deal with it here all the time. And not that my issues are even pertinent to this conversation, but just kind of throw it in there. I've had productions for different soccer leagues ask me to do an English proficiency exam.
Jeez, that's just jeez.
Okay,
goodness.
and I'm talking. It's like we're talking right now. Like, well, we have doubts that you can speak the English language.
My goodness.
Wow.
That's discrimination right there.
Again, I don't want to sidetrack it and make it, bring my. But it was just something I wanted to add on there, because the purpose of this episode is for you you, George, you, Rod, to talk about what's going on, especially with the reality that's going on now in the United States, with everything that's going on with Black Lives Matter, with the protests, with everything that's been going on. It's not just about, getting beat up on the street or being oppressed by the police, but it's also the whole systemic aspect of it, the whole cultural aspect of it that extends out, that branches out into cultural aspects.
Yeah.
And sometimes
because
in certain industries.
It's like, echoing what George said, no, I will speak for this Black man.
Yeah.
If someone came up to me and said, Rod, we're giving you the job because you're Black, I would say, no.
Same here.
Say, no, thank you, because you're saying that you don't believe in me. You're doing it because you need to fit the quota, you need to do whatever. But you really, to me, you say you don't believe in me.
Yep.
And as we have this conversation, because here's the one thing I want to be very cognizant of, because also I believe everybody in the country has the right to protest and protest and protest. But I also believe that a lot of the protesting that's happened, and it's taken away from really what George Floyd really would have hoped that would be, is this sort of emotional, grabbing onto the emotion of the conversation, emotion of the moment. But speaking here today has really made me realize is that we just need a chance, and we don't get a chance.
Yeah.
We just need a chance.
That's it.
And that's all I, because I have this conversation now, not because for me, because if it was about me, I wouldn't be having this conversation, because I'd still be protecting me. And really what made me want to have this conversation is my wife came to me when all this started happening. She said, hey, Rod, my oldest boy's 13. She goes, you need to have the conversation with him about being Black. You know what? No, we had talked about a few months before, we need to start having the conversation about sex. But now we're having the conversation about, we need to have the conversation about he's Black and what potentially could happen to him just because he's Black.
Yep.
So that's been one of the major driving forces now to have this conversation. And, as my oldest daughter's 27, and my worry about my oldest, this is how crazy the world has changed. She's born in 1992. My worry was having a daughter that was part Hispanic, part Black, the limited opportunity she would have because she's part Black, part Hispanic, and a woman.
Oof.
Now it's changed.
In the U.S.
In the U.S.
Yeah.
Now it's changed in 2020 that I got to talk to my 13-year-old boy that you could be severely hurt by authority because you're Black.
Yep. I had the same
conversation.
Yep. I had the same conversation. I don't have kids, but I have a nephew and my niece, my brother's children. My brother's is in the Army stationed in Orlando with his wife and their kids, but he has 2 kids here in Miami. And since I feel like I'm the male figure in their life, so, and I've known them since they were born. So I've taken, they sleep over my house, I've changed diapers. So I'm not a parent, but I feel like their father figure, because my brother's gone. And I had to talk to my oldest nephew, who's 16, Alex. And I had to tell him, look, this is the situation with the police. I personally told him, I said, look, this is life or death. This isn't a game. If you see a police officer, you go the opposite direction. I mean, because there's nothing on a police officer's uniform that says good cop, bad cop. Nothing on a police officer's uniform that says racist, not racist. We don't know. So when you're playing with your life, you cannot take that chance. So I've had to tell my nephew, who's 16 now, and he goes out with his friends and all of that. I said, look, if you see the police, first of all, don't attract any attention to yourself so that the police don't even look your way. But if you see a police officer, go the other direction, because you just don't know. You can't trust them. I've had that conversation with my nephew, my niece, Raya. She's going to be 11 this year, and I'm going to have to talk to her about it, because it's the same situation. And instead of talking about how good their grades were this semester, I have to talk to them about the dangers of living in America. That's sad, but it's a way of life. It's a way of life, because if I don't talk to them about it and Rod doesn't talk to his kids about it, they might not be around. That's devastating. That is devastating as a parent. You know that your kid's life is in danger. That's devastating. So you have to educate them now so that they can survive, so they can get to the point where they're old enough and make whatever decision they want of life. So I completely understand that, even though I'm not a parent. Like I said, my nephew and niece are I treat them like my kids. So this is a tough time in America right now. And there's a for me personally, there's a real kind of rational side that says, okay, let's stay calm, talk this out, try to get to the point where we all live together and be happy as one. And then there's part of me, I'm going to be honest with you, that's real militant, that goes, you know what, F the police. This is messed up. Let's get them all and hope they all go to jail. And that's not productive. That's not productive to think that way, to be angry about it.
At this stage, neither one seems productive.
So it's like it's a conflict. I'm just talking about myself personally. It's a conflict between being a human being and just taking everybody as individuals and trying not to look at skin color, ethnicity, race. Well, there's only one race, that's the human race, but the skin color and the ethnicity. And then there's another part of me as a black man who's angry, who's saying, yo, man, F these people and let's go get them and, look out for yourself and the world is messed up and we just gotta look out for self and F these people and F the cops. There's that struggle within me personally that I have to deal with because it's just so crazy right now. And I want to be someone who takes people as individuals. If you cool with me, I'm cool with you, regardless of skin color, ethnicity. But it's hard now. It's hard.
George, you mentioned something. Well, go ahead, Ron.
You go ahead.
Now, both of you actually, now that I think of it, mentioned it about Europe and how they tackle this particular topic. Is it cultural intelligence or just a willingness to engage with the past? A willingness to go and have that conversation, a willingness to go and collectively try and vanquish those demons as a society?
Well, I think it's country by country, right? Because some countries I've been in, I'll give an example. Let me, I'll answer that question, but I'll lead into that question.
Sure.
So let's be honest, right? We have to be honest, George. I mean, I know I can speak for myself because like within races, there is racism within races against the same colors. For instance, if you are more educated, people look at you different. Or if you're a lighter color within your race or a darker color within your race. All these things, right? So a lot of the races are pointing fingers, but they also got to look within to figure out their own. Something and I'll speak to the Black culture again. We have accepted the N-word so easily in society that it's taken the sting out, but when we get mad when we don't like how people use it. And, that's something that we need to address too as well. It's like within communities, within individual, like in the white community, if their socioeconomic status is low, then hey, they're white trash, or they are hillbillies, or they, all those things within the racism within the race is also a problem. And then when I take that out in Europe, right, a lot of the countries I go to in Europe, it's simply we are Spanish or we are Croatian. It's not that we are Black Spanish or Croatian. We are just Croatian. And in the US, we say things like, oh, he's a Black American. Why can't he just be a Black US citizen or Hispanic US citizen, or simply he is a US citizen or he is a citizen of the US? But why do we have to distinguish? Because I think that creates some friction a lot of times in our society. So Juan, to your question, I think some of that view of how people see it, right? They see it in a different light, perhaps.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned, Rod, the N-word, because I don't say that word, period. And I caught my nephew saying it a few weeks ago, and I told him, oh, don't you ever say that word. I stopped because, I was young and you're young. And I love hip hop music, but they say it a lot in hip hop music. I love still listen to it. And you're young, you don't know any better. So I used to say the N-word all the time. Then when I hit about 18, 19, and you start to hear other people use it, and then you see how disrespectful it is then you start to say, man, this is not right. If you have any kind of conscious of self, you say it's not right. So I stopped using the N-word like for 20 years now, because it's a word that brings us down. There's nothing positive about it. I don't care how you spell it. I don't care how you say it. There's nothing positive about that word at all. And I told my nephew, I said, you are not an N-word. You are a king. You are a prince. You are not an N-word. So don't let your friends tell you that word, and don't you use that word. If I catch you using the word, you're gonna see the N-word come out of me. You know what I'm saying? So I had to kind of educate him on that. And in terms of, yes, we in the black community, we have a lot of issues. You mentioned, Rod, there's colorism. If you're lighter skinned, you get treated a certain way. You're darker skinned, you get treated a certain way. If you come from an upper class family, you're bougie. If you come from the ghetto, you're a hood rat, or you're what is it, ratchet. If I remember as a kid growing up, they used to call me Haitian booty scratcher. Oh, you got Haitian body odor, African booty scratcher, all of that, So there's definitely issues which I think we need to work on those first before we start any kind of protests. We talk about Black Lives Matter. We need to incorporate that within each other. It doesn't matter if you're from Ethiopia or from Egypt, or if you're from Haiti or from Hattiesburg. If you have that common thread of African descendants, then we need to be looking at each other and say, our Black Lives matter to each other more than to the structure or the supremacist power structure, if you want to use that expression. Yeah. So that's certainly to me the number one problem that we as Black people have, is the hate that we have within our own people. That to me is the number one problem. But to the point about Europe, yeah, you're right, Rod. Look, everybody said I'm Croatian, I'm Spanish, I'm English, I'm this and that. The history of those continents, of those countries they used to fight each other all the time. Both world wars are coming out of Europe. So they really fought hard to establish their own identities. But remember that diversity, they don't have the racial diversity. Well, England does. France and France too. But Spain, not so much. Portugal, a little bit. But you basically go west of, is it west or east of France? I always get the geography wrong.
It's very few and far between.
Right.
When you start going,
exactly.
East of France or Spain.
Exactly. East of France, there isn't a big Black Polish population that could get affirmative action or civil rights. You know what I mean? So the history of the continent is different than the United States. The United States history is really unique because of the immigration, the slavery, and so many other issues as well. Remember, half the country really is really Mexico. If you think about the history, over there in the west of the Mississippi, or even west of whatever mountain range between Nevada, Sierra Nevada,
the entire Southwest.
Yeah, the entire Southwest. Look, that's all. New Mexico, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, those are all Spanish names. So that's a part of it as well. By the way, just historical note, I got to say this as a Haitian. Louisiana Purchase is because of the Haitian Revolution. I just had to say that. I'm sorry. But, the history is just so crazy. And I think we still have a problem where we don't see each other as humanity. This is the key. As Black people, there are still non-Black people out there who still look at us like, I don't know if it's slaves or like we're here to amuse you or entertain people. And they forget, Rod is making a living so his kids can go to college, just like any other white family, just like my family. We have to have a job. We have to feed Black people. We don't survive off of dancing. Here. We need to eat and drink and be healthy too. And I think people just have lost, because of the history, especially in the United States, they don't see us as human beings. And when you don't see people as human beings, you leave yourself open to all kind of atrocities. And the N-word is part of that. The N-word is part of it. If we stop calling each other the N-word, then people would stop calling us the N-word. If Black people started calling each other mattresses, if we said, yo, what's up, my mattress? I guarantee you within 3 weeks, all the non-Black people in America would start calling each other mattresses. Guarantee. But there's so many layers to this, but it's all about come down to, do you respect humanity? Period. regardless of what skin color a person has. If you don't respect humanity, then you know what? I don't need to be in your presence. But if you respect humanity, you truly do, then you need to stop looking at people's skin color and give them a chance to be themselves. That's what it is, comes down to.
Gentlemen, it's been awesome to have you on. I mean, this could probably have 15, 20, 30 episodes that you could probably talk about and unpack even more.
I'm sorry, Rod. I'm sorry I took too long. I do TV, so I talk a lot. So my bad.
Yeah. And you should hear them when they only have 40 seconds. How quickly you can say so many things. I should say, "Hey George, you have 20 seconds." You know, like, yeah. But again, thanks for being on, gentlemen. But one last question, and I guess this is where I guess it was the best and only time and appropriate time where I had any right to interject at all. It's that some of us also have to also try and break some of those barriers, because me as a Latino here in the United States, I know the defects that many of the communities that fall under that umbrella have towards themselves, towards Black people, and George, you know, here in Miami how it is as well. It might be a little bit discreet. Sometimes it's not sometimes it's not even subtle at all, but you're starting to see a bit of a change. Some people are starting to finally, I don't know, maybe they needed that wake up call, if you will, to start saying, damn, okay, this is real. This is a thing. What do they do? What's the next step to be done in terms of them not only understanding, but also gaining more empathy and saying, hey, you know what? No, this is bullshit. We can't let people be taken advantage of, be exploited, be oppressed the way that they are right now. Rod.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that we really truly have to get to, right, is we need to really listen to one another, not shout at each other, but have conversation, right? Because if we don't have conversation and we don't give people a chance to talk, we don't give people a chance to express themselves, we don't get a chance to look in someone's eyes and see the hurt and the pain that they feel because this is their perception of what is going on. Forget if it's wrong or right, it's still their perception. And we as humans must do our best to help people get through that part, and also to have empathy for them and to show care for them and to give them the opportunity, right? Because if we don't, we got to continue, right? I look at it like this, and this will be my last statement. I kind of look at life, right? I look at what my parents went through being born in the 40s, right after the war ended, World War II ended, going through Vietnam, going through civil war, going through civil rights. And then I come along and I see the world. And I see the world and I see what it is. And each decade I would say to myself, yeah, maybe a little bit better, because there are certain things, racial things that would happen. Okay, 70s, okay, the 80s is going to be better than the 80s is going to be better than the 70s. You know, the 90s is going to be better than the 80s. The 2000s are going to be better than the 90s. And we're still at the same place, 75 years later.
Yeah.
Only thing that's changed, laws have changed to make people act differently, but people haven't changed their fundamental belief of what they see in people through race.
Yeah. Yeah.
George?
I think for me, I like what Rod said, so I'm going to piggyback off of that. I think for me, this is something that has to be generational. So if you really want your kids to live in a world that's peaceful, you have to teach them that peaceful. Yeah, it has to be passed down from generation to generation. So you have to teach your kids not to look at race, to just judge people like Martin Luther King, the content of their character, instead of looking at race. And you have to teach them to teach their kids that, so that it goes generation to generation. The fact that this has been going on for 80 years means that the generations haven't been teaching their kids how to not be racist, or to be less racist or less prejudiced. So for me, it's about doing going inside yourself saying, what's wrong with me? Am I really a human being, someone who cares about humanity? And if I do, I got to teach my kids this. And then my kids have to teach their kids that. That's the only way it's going to happen, is if we break it down generation to generation, pass it down generation to generation. Because people say history repeats itself. You know why? Because people are stupid, you know? So if you stop right now and you say, look, I don't want my kids to feel this way about any group of people, then you got to teach them that. And then you have to teach your kids to teach their kids that. And then it goes generation to generation.
Gentlemen, thank you again for being here on Beyond the Pitch. Rod, where can people follow you on social media?
You can follow me at Cut Inside. That's on Twitter. Follow me at Cut Inside. That's the best place. That's why I'm most active. I'm on LinkedIn too. I have a website, rodunderwood.com. You can find me on all those places. You know, I try to be relevant even though I'm old, but I try to be relevant on the social media.
All right.
You're not that much older than us. Like, we're all, me and Juan are in our 40s, so it's not like, you know, we're teenagers.
You guys are youngsters, man. You guys are youngsters. You guys are youngsters.
What about you, George?
I keep it. I have my Twitter and Instagram is GD Metellus 8 on Twitter and Instagram. I got to keep one name for everything, or else I'll get confused. So GD Metellus 8 on Twitter and Instagram.
All right, gentlemen. Again, thank you so much for being on the show. Boy, this was a long one.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a lot to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just hope, I mean, I really hope that once this gets out, I mean, my life is about faith, but I really hope this gets out, and I really hope that it really influences changes to go on what George said. We can have a generational impact, a generational change, and that's really what's going to be important.
Actually, you know, I just thought, I already said bye to everybody. Now I have one more question. Rod, for those upcoming Black young coaches, what do you say?
You know, at this stage in my career, I still want that big job. I still want that big opportunity. I still want that. But more importantly, I want up-and-coming Blacks, up-and-coming underrepresented people in the game to say that I want to pave that way for them. I want them to have a pathway that they can see clearly that they have a chance. And I hope they can achieve way more than I ever achieved in the game.
George, what about you, as far as young and up-and-coming Black broadcasters?
My advice to them,
broadcasters, as you say.
Yeah, I would say to them, look, just get as much knowledge as possible about all the leagues in the world, Europe, in the North America, South America, learn a different language, and be open to other cultures. That's the main thing. I've been blessed that because of where I work, even though I think there should be more minority representation, but still, I've been blessed to learn about other people's cultures, and that's made me a better person. And it's made me able to talk and adapt to people. So get a good education, learn another language, learn as much about all these football leagues as possible, you know, study broadcasting, obviously, and then be open to other people's cultures.
Okay, now we're going to leave.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And I hope we have this conversation more and more often, because it's something that we all definitely need. So, again, thank you so much. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.